least they kept the plates. And they have issued it off and on. I don't know how many printings it's gone through, but back when we had having some of our hearings down at Water Quality Control Board on Roman Falls Cave, they had a little cabinet up there where you got off the elevator on the 14th floor, or 17th, wherever it was. Lo and behold, there sat a copy of my book. It was littler. They had reduced the size. I guess so you put it in your hip pocket as you crawl through caves or something. But it was a lot more expensive too. So it has been continuously available, should I say, in print for 42 years now. It's still going. I once asked how many, how it was selling, and they said, "Oh, that's our best seller ever." So I had visions of thousands and thousands, tens and 20s and 30,000 copies. I said, "Well, how many copies have you sold?" "Well, it must be at least 7,000. So anyway, it has been a good seller apparently. I've often wondered what the results of the book might be, because you wonder whether you should publish locations or not. And of course, having had the state pay, not sumptuously, but whatever, for us to go around and do this work, they felt they had to publish locations, obviously. And so I tried to put conservation messages in and out. And caves had been ruined, but it says they were just, I would put a statement like they were ruined by vandals or something, and hope that the message would get through to maybe 50% of the readers. Since retiring and moving back to Tennessee, I've been and heard about a few of the caves and talked to a few owners, and results have not been as disastrous as they might have been from what I've heard. Ron Johnston down at the Priest Branch told me that he had been stimulated, he saw my book, he'd been stimulated to buy the property on which the Priest Branch cave opens, and he became a reasonably active caver and even gated the cave. In fact, he wouldn't let me in the cave till I autographed his copy of the book. We went to Bethel Cave over near Linden, and Sarah Choate, the old lady who now owns it, was very hospitable, and I wondered how I was going to explain to her we wanted to collect a rare species of cave beetle in our cave. She said, "Oh, you mean Pseudothalmus hesperus." Well, then it occurred to me that I had used that species as an illustrative sketch in the beginning of the book, and she had a copy of the book, which I had his autograph, of course. But she, in her 70s, she went with some, I couldn't go down the hill, couldn't get back up, but we had a bunch of cavers, Lynn, Roebuck, and others. But I think Rob went down, Rob Robbins, to the cave, and Sarah went with them, and she had never seen this little rare cave beetle before. She was amazed how little it was, but at least she knew what it looked like. And they were moderately successful. Got about 10 specimens, which was, I think, 3 times the number of known specimens for that whole species. But anyway, there were unexpected effects like that, and I've had any number of people come up and tell me they had gotten started in caving by reading the book. And then there was the one guy who found out I was interested in caves, and he started telling me about this book that had all these cave descriptions and locations in it, and he kept going. And about halfway through, I finally said, "Yeah, I know the book. I wrote it." We stopped at about 700 cave descriptions. Now I understand that when the latest figures from TCS is about 8,500 or so cave recorded. So we have gone, is that how many minutes I have? We're about 10. I only have half a page of notes left. All in all, I believe Age of Tennessee was a pretty good start. I mean, it stimulated a lot of work. And we had 700 descriptions. And then Larry talked about his book later, he added about 300 more 10 years later. That's probably the extent of any imminent cave publications from TDEC, I would imagine. But the book has had not as bad an effect as I had thought. Some of the conservation message has gotten through and has stimulated people that are interested in preserving caves and pushing exploration and preserving the information that is obtained, not mapping it 50 times and the same cave over and over again. Do you have other memories? Roy and I made a deal. I wouldn't tell any tales about him if he didn't tell any about me later on tonight. I haven't mentioned anything about him much, except when he was away in the truck and Bert and I were not.
Don't you think it's remarkable how I have remained silent for this long?
That's because I didn't tell any of those tales about it.
There is a you all know, of course, my interest in pipe organs. There was a famous organist named Richard Liebert who recorded many theater organ recordings, and he applied for the position of playing the organ at Radio City Music Hall, the first organist at the theater. And he very cleverly got himself appointed as the last one to audition at the console. And there were many other well-known and proficient organists who applied for the job. Dick Liebert was very proficient, very articulate with the keyboard, and he waited until the others had finished, and then when his turn came, he got up and played each of the things that they had played in a medley, and then played them all together at once, and of course won the job and was the organist of Radio City as long as he lived. And so that's what I'm planning here, you see. This is my plot. At first I heard Ed and Bill and I heard Tom. I'm going to listen to all the sessions, and then tonight I'm going to let you have it. Now Tom said we had agreed not to talk about one another, and the fact of the matter is he proposed this and he agreed. So you're all in for it. The things I want to say about the cave survey are very brief. In 1953, when Tom proposed that I join the team and go exploring in the caves of Tennessee, was a dream fulfilled. I had been, for a number of years in my short caving career up to that time, trying to figure out a way that you could make money exploring caves, and a condition I have since managed very well, I think. But Tom hired me, and Tom was my boss, and Bert and the other fellows and I did Tom's bidding. Carrying the rope was one of those, and the tighter crawlways and the more difficult descents we were called upon to make. But Tom was the genius, and I say that in all kindness. We would see the cave, have an impression of it, maybe take pictures, take measurements. But when we got back in the car, either Bert or I would be driving, and Tom would sit in the passenger side with a laptop typewriter. There was no such thing as a laptop computer in those days. Tom is a crackerjack typist. Few people probably know that. But at 90 words a minute, he'd be cracking out all the notes of what we had done that day. When I was not driving, I was in the back of the truck, and I kept a diary. I did not write down the scientific aspects of the cave, which Tom not only could write, but could also spell those syllables type words. But I wrote a diary about the things that happened to us, the wacky things, the funny things. Tom mentioned our having an allowance for going to restaurants, and we did that often. But we were cheap. He was too. And more than likely, we would pocket that $2 sum that we got from the state and do our own cooking. And we had a Coleman stove and a Coleman oven and we would, an ice chest, and we would collect all kinds of canned goods and things to eat and prepare on the cave trips. And also, we didn't stay in motels. Usually we'd camp out somewhere, oftentimes in a cave. And Tom was the chef one night, and I would be the chef another night. Tom, I recently tried a can of Chef Boyardee ravioli. I think you thought that was one of the finest meals a person could have back in the 50s. I can tell you it sucks.
It was cheap.
But we did have those adventures, and in my diary, I kept all the funny things that happened to us. I didn't remember the Jack Daniels story exactly like you did. I thought that the liquor was a reward if we did not tell what gave Jack Daniels his maybe I was wrong. And my recollection also is that night, with these jingling little bottles in the boxes that we had collected, that we camped on the banks of the Duck River or somewhere.
No, it was over near Bobo Cave, I think, down in the pasture.
Yeah, I had this wrong there, but I remember our camping one night on the bank of some river, and the imbibing, not me, went on for a considerable time, and to the point where my two companions became so obnoxious that I got my rubber raft and floated across the river and camped on the other side. The abuse, and they were always giving me a hard time. This turned out to be a bad idea because the next morning I discovered that I had narrowly missed going over a waterfall. In the darkness, when I got back safely. And so the cave survey was a wonderful time of adventure. I didn't remember our preoccupation with stills and moonshine, although I know there were some of those. My memory was near Chattanooga, we went to see a cave that was rumored to be so large that you could fly an airplane into it. And so we went to see Airplane Cave. And Tom sent me up a little hill from above the road, and we were already back in the backwoods some distance to meet at the last house to talk to the man about Airplane Cave. And so I knocked on the door of this disreputable old log cabin, and this equally disreputable redneck came to the door and said, yeah. And I said, we've come to see the cave up on the mountain. And he said, there ain't no cave up there. And I said, oh yeah, we're told this cave is so big you could fly an airplane into it. There ain't no cave up there, he said. And so I persisted again, all my charm. And lastly, he picked up a double-barrel shotgun that was leaning against the door, looked across his chest and said, there ain't no cave up there. Well, I figured he lived there. He ought to know what it is. And to this day, as far as I know, Airplane Cave has not been found. So those were the kinds of experiences that we had, and I can go on with stories like this forever. But Tom and I did agree that he was going to discuss the cave survey and let me get even tonight. So I'll wind up my remarks at this time. And if any of you have any questions that either of us can answer, we'd be happy to do that for you at this time.
Was it fun? Was it fun?
Yeah, most of the time.
It was fun all the time.
How did you make these wonderful maps that are all through the book? Didn't that take a lot of time?
No, it took a minimal amount of time because we knew we didn't have the time to do the elaborate detail maps. And so we just used the Burton and Pace technique that Bill Davies had used in West Virginia moderately. It gives you a rough idea of the cave anyway. I figured the detailed engineering surveys, if they were necessary, could be done more profitably by other people. We could cover about 2 counties in the time it would take to do one detailed map.
Tom is modest because the system worked very well. We thought at Cumberland Caverns, I had drawn a sketch map, just a concept map of the cave, and drug it around everywhere showing people what a great place it was. But it had been done just by golly. And so Tom and Bert and I later did a compass and pace survey, and were surprised that the closure between the historic entrance and the Henshaw entrance was something like an error of 300 feet or something like that in all those miles of cave. So it was more accurate than you might think.
How many caves a day can you cover?
Oh, I'd say a good day, 4 or 5. Depends how big they were. Big caves take longer, as you know. Little caves, a lot of little caves, the time is spent in looking for the individual caves.
David Clark.
Out of all those caves, what was the highlight?
Oh, it'd be hard to say for sure. The most time we spent was in Higginbottom Cave, which became Cumberland Caverns.
Well, the Great Extension was the highlight for my entire career, so, and that was a part of the cave survey in a sense, but the discovery of that was the highlight of my entire life.
How many more caves did you have to include in the book that the time ran out on?
Oh, there were, I think, leads about 100 and 150. Some of which I was able later to follow up on and collected a number of specimens of particularly beetles, which are the most numerous troglodytes of any group in the state.
And were you collecting biological samples while you're doing the survey?
More so toward the end. First place, it takes a while to learn where to look, to have a knack for collecting the things, and also an interest in, began with cave animals interested me in general, and I began with zeroing in on some of the salamanders, like the one in the Nashville system, which is still not described, by the way. But there's so few of those. Eventually, I began working on beetles because nobody was available, no taxonomist was available at the time who could identify them for me. And so I started looking at a few of them. One of the first ones I looked at was a specimen from Mammoth Cave. And it was I was certain it was a new species, and turned out it was. It's named Inexpectatus, incidentally. And so I figured that if I could figure that out, I probably could figure out all the rest of the species, which started out on. There are now 145 valid species names in that one genus, and about 80 more species yet to be described. And that doesn't account the 3 or 4 little genera, which is another 20 or so species. But yes, I collected a number of things, sent them around to taxonomists. In each group, we'll have specialists, hopefully. Some didn't have any, and they remain undescribed or unstudied.
Anything else?
You have learned, I'm sure, that Tom's passion in life today and then was biology, and less known is the fact that in 1953, when he was a member of the Grotto, he wrote an article called, a continuing article called Stratigraphy for the Spelunker. I was very grateful for this because I knew nothing about the rock formations or the stratigraphy of Tennessee, and I learned much of what I know from what Tom taught me in those articles, and also during the cave survey. I also studied geology at Vanderbilt under Dr. Jewell for the purpose of learning what little I know about this. But at any rate, this is significant because Tom and I are both here today, and you have heard from 2 of the original old fossils.
Thank you very much. Now, it's going to be lunchtime after 2 quick announcements. Cave trips tomorrow are to be signed up, and you can get with your trip leaders. It's Carl Bishop Jr. here. Carl's in the back of the room. He's leading a trip to the closest cave to this resort, which is Mitchell Cave of the guided caves. There's also trips to Snail Shell, and you've got the list in your handout. Sign up in the room next door and some of the trips have limited numbers of participants. Ron Johnston assures me that he can lead at least 3 groups of 10 into DePriest Branch, and that's probably going to be the most popular trip. Also, Tom Barr, will you be kind enough to perhaps sit down at 3 o'clock with Larry Matthews? Larry, when you finish your show, would you be kind enough to sit down and give us a few minutes to sign books in the room next door? Okay, 3 o'clock then. Barr and Matthews will be signing Barr and Matthews. And we'll see everybody back here at 1 o'clock for John Smyer's program. Thank you.